Welcome back, peeps, to Purrfect.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks.
Now with your amazing hosts, Alex Patterson and Brittany Postma. This episode is sponsored by Builder.io. Visually build on your tech stack. Hello. Welcome back, peeps.
Hello.
Brittany, what is our show all about today, since you're a Svelte fan?
Our show today is all about routes for Svelte with Routify, and I'm definitely a Svelte fan. Love all the Svelte stuff.
I think you got it going in your veins now. It's intense. I don't know.
I found out they have a beer that's not made by the Svelte people, but it's called Svelte, and it looks like the same writing as the logo, and I need to try it now.
That's awesome. So welcome our guests, Jake and Willow. Do you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us. I guess I'll go first then. I'm Jake, and I've been working on Routify for the last few years in my spare time, one of my open source projects. And when I'm not working open source, I work as a subcontractor for a company called PyCom.
Nice. Are you writing the same language there?
Yeah, that's purely Node at the moment.
Cool. That's awesome.
Cool.
How about you, Willow? Can you give us a little background?
Yeah, hi, I'm Willow, also known as Ghost. I just do open source work and freelancing.
I should have put up your G logo so people recognize it. I'll have to dig up your website.
It's on our thumbnail.
Yeah, it's true. It's on our cover, isn't it?
It's like a donut.
The thumbnail that's sometimes working, sometimes not.
Oh man, it's been fun between YouTube messing up our Twitter streams and Notion fun, and it's been a good time. Anyways, so let's dive into Routify a little bit. Why did you get started on Routify first of all?
It started back in the days of when we had Sapper as a framework for Svelte, and I had some issues with Sapper, technical issues that I was trying to work around. One of them was that Sapper was primarily a server-first framework, whereas I was only focused on single-page applications. So I decided to just do a quick file router, and I wrote that in a couple of days, I think, called Svelte File Router. And it got a lot of traction all of a sudden, and from there we changed into Routify, and then it kind of became its own thing with its own community, and then we've been taking it from there ever since.
So
Has there been... Go ahead.
Sorry, Sapper, for those that don't know, it was the framework before SvelteKit came around.
Exactly,
and it
yeah.
was kind of a static generator and also server-side rendered application. You had the ability to do different kind of hybrid things. Well, not hybrid, but you could server-side render or you could statically generate. So you found problems with how the routing worked in Sapper itself?
One of the issues I had was my in VS Code, where I was running it, it would start rebuilding. First it would take half a second, then a bit later it would take 2 seconds, then 5 seconds, then 10 seconds, and then I'd have to restart the whole thing. And I kept having to do it over and over. And at that point, I'd already fallen in love with the file routing of Sapper, which is a bit ironic because I've always sworn that I'd never use a file router because I thought it was too restrictive. But after trying it, I had to have it. So I had to write my own file router to get it working.
So that's a good point. That Routify is a file-based routing system, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
How would a person not on kind of the Svelte know? I know Sapper and Svelte were very tightly tied, and then now we have this new thing, SvelteKit. How does that all line up with kind of how Routify fits into the picture now?
You can use Routify on its own without SvelteKit. I've had some requests from people from Amazon who were looking to use it in their stack, where they couldn't just buy into a new framework because they had to keep what they already had in their code base. So for people who just need a router that they can plug into their existing system, Routify works for that. Or even if you're using SvelteKit, you can drop Routify into it to kind of supercharge certain aspects. There are some trade-offs, of course, because Kit has some focuses, and Routify has some other focuses, and it's kind of not one is necessarily better than the other, but they cater to different people. I'd say if SvelteKit was a Mac, Routify would be Linux. It kind of depends on what you're looking for.
So does that mean that the Linux users are more like you can customize it how you want? Is that the feeling of that? Okay.
For anyone who's been working with a framework where you at some point end up working against the framework because there's some restrictions to what you can do, and you start wondering, is this the best choice? If you run into a situation like that, I'd say that's one of the purposes of Routify. Like, you rarely hear us say that, oh, you're using it wrong. This is not how you're supposed to use it. We try to work with you and find a solution for that use case.
That makes a lot of sense. And you said that you have like people asking you to do certain things with it. Does that mean that it's just with Svelte? Can you use it outside of Svelte at all?
You can only use it inside Svelte,
Okay.
but there has been requests in the past to make it work outside of Svelte, but I don't know if that's worth it at this point.
That makes sense. Can you talk a little bit more and expand on what the difference is between, like, you said that it's like customize it and do whatever you want with it, but what exactly is it, the difference between SvelteKit's routing and Routify's routing?
For instance, if you want to have dynamic routes, not just where you have dynamic parameters, but you want to create your own routes on the fly, you can do that kind of the same way you create new nodes in your DOM. We have that, and then there's stuff like metadata, where each route or each page, or even a folder for that matter, is a node in the Routify tree. And each tree has its own metadata that you can use to customize anything from logic to what's shown on the page. And you can even populate metadata at build time to save API requests.
How does that differ from, how does that differ from SvelteHead?
To be honest, I haven't followed SvelteKit or Svelte much in the last couple of months. There's been a lot of life taken over, but I'm kind of getting back to it here in the last couple of weeks. But for SvelteHead, did you say?
Yeah. It's like a way to inject content into the head. I think it's a regular Svelte thing. It's not even like SvelteKit, but it allows you to like inject metadata and things into the head.
Yeah, just to clarify that, because I didn't mention that metadata is available at all time. That means that you don't have to load the page to access the metadata. You can, even if you had a, let's say you had a documentation site and you're working on different markdown files for your documentation, you could create a little meta tag for each page where you write down the status of that page. Is it draft? Is it published? And then at runtime, you can tell Routify to filter only the published pages. And that way you can use metadata at your own logic.
It's not like the metadata in a browser where you have like a bunch of tags
yes,
that tell other sites about your website. It's more like adding information about a route to it, and then you can you can add that at build time, you can add that at runtime. So I think I've used it before to like when I've done like generated navigation, where I have a bunch of routes and my navigation is generated based on my file structure, so I don't have to do it manually. I had like an icon property on the route, and that would allow me to use Font Awesome without having to manually add that to the navigation.
It's interesting. I feel like I did some stuff with Front Matter and Hugo that kind of did some similar things to that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like Front Matter, yeah.
If you go on Routify 3 or Routify 2 for that matter, the website, you had it open a little while back. All the navigational links there are generated based on the file structure. And there you can then, for instance, if you have a title of a navigation link that you want to change, you can change that in the metadata and then use your own logic. For instance, you could add internationalization for your links if you wanted through metadata.
Is there a way to show that on screen? And is that part of the beta 3?
If you go to docs, there should be an example of what it looks like.
Is that this one?
No, that's something we've deprecated in Routify 3. Or maybe it's in Guide. I haven't been on Routify 2 for a while. Hang on, I'll just have a look here.
So while Jake's looking, kind of the idea behind this is it still like if you have a GitHub repo, let's say, with a bunch of markdown files, this is kind of a good way to set up Svelte to use those? Is that still true?
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay.
That's kind of how we do everything almost. The pages or the sites I've been working on have almost exclusively been Markdown.
Do you use just regular Markdown, or do you use something like MD Specs with that?
I think I use MD Specs.
And
I can't remember not using that, sorry.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, like MD Specs is kind of the Svelte translation of MDX, which is the React Markdown, where you can use React components inside of it. So you can use Svelte components along with your Markdown. It's a good way to make interactive documentation. So that's why I was asking about that. And you kind of mentioned a little bit about the Routify 3, and that is currently in public beta, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sorry, could you repeat that last bit?
Routify 3 being in public beta. You want to tell us a little bit about Routify 3?
Yeah, we had Routify 2 out the door working, and I was trying to figure, was there any reason to continue the development of Routify now that we had SvelteKit? So for half a year, I was kind of just maintaining Routify to see what was going on in the SvelteKit world. And then I think around February or March last year, I decided that there's enough room for Routify and SvelteKit to do their own thing without having two flavors of the same product. And I think we have managed to differentiate ourselves very well from SvelteKit.
I like that too. And I think that it corrects me if I'm wrong, but you can use Routify with SvelteKit too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, so it doesn't even matter. Like you can still use SvelteKit and get all the benefits of SvelteKit. Like it's got a lot of things that it gives you out of the box. And then you can add Routify on top of that if you need more customization with those routes. So there's definitely room for both in that space.
Does SvelteKit provide a Markdown like loader as well?
No.
Oh, okay.
So
it's usually used.
Marked is one I use, and then I use MD Specs too. What did you say, Willow?
I said if you're writing like Markdown files, it's probably like best to use MD Specs because it's a preprocessor. So it's exactly like writing a Svelte file. You can have it as a route. You can use it wherever you would use a Svelte file normally.
Yeah.
Even if you don't even use like, even if you just use regular Markdown inside it, I think it's still probably the best.
I agree with that too. Go ahead,
I had
Jake.
another thought here. Sorry. On the Routify 3 page, if you go onto that,
Yep.
if you click the docs link there in the middle, and then click docs again, that's another example of a site built with Routify, where all the links are created by the file structure, and all the pages are then inlined in a single page instead of individually. And that's another thing you can do with Routify.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
And another feature, I can't remember if I mentioned that, is you can have multiple router instances. For our example here, we use multiple routers inside the Routify instance to show the different examples. So if you click an example, any of the examples you scroll by there, if you go back up, I think, that'll show your browser inside the browser. Scroll down a bit.
That's crazy.
That is.
And there you have the browser with the links. So you can click post or movie, and it'll show the address in the bar above. Yeah.
So is like this isn't iframing or anything? Is it just pulling in like a Svelte component and loads it?
Yeah, and even the code you see there is the actual code. So if you change the code on the server, it will reflect the example. So that's a one-to-one.
Nice. I don't know if it doesn't look like I can
I don't
change
think
anything.
that's editable. I think he said on the server. So
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Nice. That's really cool.
That gives a lot of customization to the way that you use your routes, right? And that's kind of the purpose of Routify, is to like allow you that customization that you need, like to make your routes as specific as you need them.
Yes, I can't think of any other way to do what we did with the Routify 3 site. There might be ways to do it in React, but I'm terrible with React, so I wouldn't even know where to start.
Awesome. What are some of the differences between Routify 2 and Routify 3? What was improved? What changed?
Multiple routers, that you can have several instances. That's one of the biggest features. And that's one of the justifications for creating a Routify 3, because there was no other alternative if that was something you needed, like we did for the documentation page here. And then also it's a complete rewrite that's focused a lot more on modularity and plugins, whereas Routify 2 was it was written out of necessity, where what I needed first and foremost was what I did first, and then down the road I figured this could be engineered a lot better, and that's where Routify 3 came in, and I decided to write everything from scratch and organize it a lot better than it was before.
I'm kind of curious, just looking at this docs page, is there a GitHub repo for the actual docs we could take a peek at just to kind of compare?
Yeah, if you go on Routify, I think it's GitHub and then Roxiness/Routify. I can send you a link here if you want.
Is this
I think we got it.
I think this
I think the docs is still under its own repo.
Oh yes, sorry.
Go on the Roxiness org.
Willow's right. That has its own. It's called V3 Routify Dev. I can send a link here.
is it this one?
Yeah, that's the doc site. And yeah.
So if you go into source there, you'll see the whole structure on the routes.
So our kind of top level at this is this index, correct?
Exactly.
For those of you who use SvelteKit, underscore module is the same as underscore layout in SvelteKit. It's renamed because the module can do quite a lot more. Like it can have logic. It's not just like the layout of your site. It has like logic in and all these different things. So we renamed it.
This is a very interesting thing. So you chose to name it underscore module. They were actually just debating this with SvelteKit if they should rename
sections.
underscore layout.
Yeah, I think they decided on doing like sections. Which
Well,
is a really
no, I think they
idea.
decided not to do it at all.
Oh,
They were
really?
going to do sections, and then they changed their minds. Yeah.
I was thinking about section as well last year.
Really?
There's a hello from Bogak Govan. I hope I'm getting that name right. I'm sure you guys might know. Sorry,
Yeah, we put up a fuss about underscore sections. A couple of us in the Svelte Society channel were like, we don't really love that name. We're so used to layout from Sapper, but I mean, module kind of makes sense.
When Jake first mentioned it to me, I was like, what?
Like, why? I'm so used to this. Why do you have to change things?
Yeah.
I got a lot of resistance for that. Not just from Willow. Nobody liked it. But one of the reasons
get used to it, right?
Yeah. One of the reasons was that every time I had to explain something in Discord about how you could handle the logic, I always told people to think of layout as a module instead. And the second I tell them to think of it as a module instead of a layout, it's like everything falls into place. And then I figured it might just be better to call it module and avoid the confusion.
That does make sense. That's why I liked that, because I was like, that I mean, we think of like packages as modules, and I actually use like props in Svelte with that same example. Like if we want to let a prop be used by something else, we export it just like a module. So we import and export, and I love that visual. So that kind of did the same thing for me with the
Nice.
Routify thing.
Hey,
And
we're
we-
going to pause one quick
Yeah.
minute to hit our advertiser, Builder.io. Today's podcast is brought to you by Builder.io, visually building the web. Builder.io has one of the most powerful visual editors in the industry. Unlike other tools, Builder actually produces the code for you. You don't have to completely switch out your framework either, just use one of the handy SDKs that are available. There's no limits to what you can build. Instead of limiting your marketing team, start to optimize and let them do the work. This will allow your web developers to get back to the hard work that it takes for other components, allowing your team to do A/B testing and personalization. Stop worrying about bugs in production. Just use the site as it is, then you can analyze and start converting all of your customers with Builder's built-in heat maps. Stop limiting your growth with developers' long lead times. Start building, optimizing, analyzing, and start growing faster. Don't take my word for it. You can sign up for free today and start building the web visually with Builder.io.
Welcome
I
back.
have to ask your opinions since you're all Svelte people. We have this product called Mitosis at Builder.io, and it's come up a few times. Like, can it produce Svelte? And it can produce anything. But I told Brittany about this, and I was like, you can just write JSX and it'll produce anything. She's like, bah, JSX. I need some other people to tell me. Does everyone hate JSX in the Svelte community?
No.
I don't hate it. I don't,
Strong dislike.
I mean, like, I think it's weird. But I don't hate it. Like, I've used it before, not too much, but I definitely prefer templating.
Okay. I was just kind of curious. Like, it's interesting when you're like using mitosis because it's just defining something that produces other things. And I was like, really?
I think I've
Brittany's
said this.
reaction was really hard.
Sorry. Yeah, I have this like really gut like wrenching reaction to JSX, but if I say this, I think I've said this before, it makes me switch in my brain from like HTML to JavaScript, and it's JavaScript that you're writing. And so like the templating that it uses, and I know it's not a templating language, but when you're writing like a map or something, you have to do it in a specific way. You can't write like just JavaScript. You have to know how to do it. Like you have to write the and, or you have to do it with a ternary, and you can't write if this, which is like Svelte. You just write a templating block and you say if this, else this. Like it's just English. So it's kind of like Python for me too, was very straightforward because it was like writing English. So I feel like Svelte brings me to that vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and splits them up to where I don't have to switch in my brain.
So on that example, like the if-else piece, does that just get compiled out, or is there like a function that still runs the two different HTML snippets?
Anybody else want to answer this?
Sorry,
it's
I'm
just
quizzing
an
on
if.
Svelte. I just don't know enough.
Sorry, ask that again. Sorry.
It's just an if.
It's
Yeah, it's interesting. On this Svelte REPL, it actually shows you the compiled output, and like a big thing when debugging problems like that are bugs with Svelte is just looking at the compiled output because it's really simple, and it's quite like once you've read it a few times, you start to understand. So it's not bad if you want to like just play around with what happens when you do this and when you do this. It's really interesting.
yeah. I can always go into what are the little snippets called? The runtime. They have
REPL?
Yes, the
Yeah.
repls.
Yeah.
Repls rubbles. Anyways, sorry, I've completely sidetracked the whole Routify conversation. So,
No worries.
so like for me, this looks like an amazing way to create all of like a docs setup for Svelte. Can this also be used, or would it be used like in a production application for like Brittany's Granger group? Like, would it be used in that context, or is it like primarily used for documentation?
No, it's definitely not primarily used for documentation. That's just what I've been using it for so far.
Okay.
But I know, like the people at Bodybase used it for a fairly large project, and yeah, in fact, the only people I can think of who's been using it for documentation is us. Everybody else has been using it for bigger projects.
So I would imagine like you couldn't use it with a CMS because of the file structure, or is that not true?
You can, and it has been used for CMS, especially because you can create routes dynamically, kind of like you create the DOM nodes in HTML.
That's pretty cool.
What are some of the use cases for it? So you mentioned a couple companies that use it, but what are they using it for?
You'd have to look up Bodybase then, BUDI base, because I can't remember exactly. I think they do, what's it called?
Let's see here.
Low code.
Bodybase is an application builder. I don't know if they still use it, but I think they did.
They use SvelteKit on their production site, and then their community site uses Routify, the bundle you load or download if you want to make your own thing, as far as I recall. It's been a while.
Okay. So with that, I think I'm starting to like piece it together. If I like use Gatsby or something like that for an example, it seems like they build static sites with the dynamic API. Can it call out to like data endpoints then and still produce a page?
Yes, easily.
That's awesome. So where does that actually run? Because my understanding of Svelte, and again, this is different probably than Routify, is that it's precompiled, right? So how do you like create? Is it just a template that's sitting there, and when the API like hits it, it knows how to produce HTML back out?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And there are two ways to do it in Routify 3. One way is to just create your site like you create any other and fetch the API data in real time. And then you also have a preload function now where you can pull the data in at build time. So if you have for instance, a very large API where you have to make 1 million requests for a site build, you could do that just at build time. And then once that's done, you don't have to do it again.
So it actually has kind of like Next.js has like incremental static rebuild.
Kind of.
What's that?
Regeneration.
Regeneration, yes. So is it that same kind of concept? If I run like my blog and I only want the first 100 pages for like Svelte to create, this can kind of pick up after that and continue to build out. So so there must be a server somewhere or like a Lambda that has to be sitting there to produce that other side?
Yeah, you need to provide your own server if you want to do that dynamically.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just happens when you build.
That's pretty cool. So is there like a Docker image or anything like that sets that up for you?
No, well, we have talked about in the past if we should create a Docker image to get things started easier for some people.
There is. So we had a CLI called Stack Mix, which allows you to like build your own template. So you can select the bundler and you can select a bunch of little different stacks and stuff. It's just for like, it's kind of like, for those of you who know Svelte ads, it's kind of like that, but you have to do it when you generate the template. And that has a Docker image in it, but I don't believe it's maintained.
No,
but I think a lot of people using Docker will be allowed to do it anyway. And it's just like there's no difference between running Routify and running SvelteKit builds. You're still using Vite, most likely. You can just build your site usually, and so any Svelte Vite image or rollup or whatever bundle you want to use really is just going to work fine.
That was one of the questions I had, is when it switched from 2 to 3, was there like a switch from using just rollup to like using Vite 2? Were there any issues with that?
Well, we don't push on we push Vite, but we don't. You're not tied into Vite because Routify can run anywhere Svelte runs. Okay. So we've seen people use Webpack, we've seen Rollup because our templates used to be Rollup. I don't think we've seen people. We used to support Snowpack, like have an official thing for it, but we don't know if we do that anymore.
Yeah.
We did get a question that came in. Can Routify build a spa as well?
Yeah, that was the primary purpose of it.
Is SPA Plus where we have tools to build to SSR and our SSR tool, it uses JSDOM. So unlike those of you who use SvelteKit, you don't have to deal with like wrapping everything in if browser, because it's always, whether it's built on the server or built or running on the client, it's always going to have a browser context, which is one of the reasons I love our SSR tools, because I'm building a website and I want to use the browser APIs regardless of whether I'm rendering in a server or rendering on a browser.
Wow, that like unhatches something in my brain. Like, if it's always got a browser context, is it like, I don't know, in V8 style to build a page? Then, like, help me understand that if there's no server.
So if you're building if you're like doing SSR, that's on the server, right? But we use JSDOM, which is kind of like a simulated DOM API. So you still have access to like local storage window, etc. I think I don't know the benefits of, I think it's called native SSR, which is what SvelteKit uses. I think it's usually speed. But we've been exploring another package alternative to JSDOM called HappyDOM. And I can't remember what the issue with that was. That means we can't use it yet, but it's significantly faster.
Oh yeah, we were lacking dynamic imports. That was the last obstacle, and once that's in place, and it could be in place now because I haven't been checking on it for a while. But once that's there, we should have some really good SSR for Routify.
That's pretty wild.
That's awesome. That's one of the
that's one of the bigger differences as well between Routify and Kit, where Kit has a very strong focus on having a complete product that takes care of everything. Routify just takes care of routing, and then we have separate tools that take care of server-side rendering and search indexing, things like that.
Yeah.
But they're not built into Routify. They're universal tools that you could use with React or Vue or whatever you have.
That's actually one of the things we love about the Jamstack and that we talk about quite often, is that it's nice to have all these best-in-class tools. It's kind of hard to link them all together. And it's very hard to do one tool that does everything for you. So you can't do everything great. So it's nice to have like some other choices here and there. Yeah. I like that. When we were looking at the GitHub repo, I saw that it has the used who's using Routify. If we could pull that back up. And then it talks about the maintainers. And I wanted to ask, I know, Jake, you created Routify and Willow helps maintain it, but how many people are actually working on it actively right now?
Right now, it's just me and Willow. Routify 2 had a lot of people involved, especially with documentation, website, stuff like that.
Some very, very clever people like Dominic and Rixo, and like we had help from, I think Wolford does the website, did the website design, and there's so many other people. We got Brady Fractal, he's around sometimes.
Who did our bubble popping on the siren site?
Yes.
Well, Willow implemented the bubble popping. Brady did the sound for the bubble popping.
Who else have we got? Who's on the team? I think some of you might know Alice.
Quite a few of the people I recognize from the Svelte community. So yeah. Tiger is in there. Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. So is there anything that we've missed from like going from Routify 2 to 3, what the benefits are, anything else you want to share about Routify?
I can't remember if I mentioned it, but Routify 2 only works with JSDOM for server-side rendering, whereas Routify 3 has native SSR as well. So you can put it inside of SvelteKit and use native SSR with everything that entails, or you can, once we get the new tools out, you can use it like you did with Routify 2 and not have to write any SSR code. It just works as it is. But we're not quite there yet. Soon though.
We wanted, I think I pushed quite heavily for Routify and SvelteKit for a while. And I think the conclusion we ended up coming to was more like, if you're using SvelteKit, keep using SvelteKit until you have a need to Routify. And if you really want to add into SvelteKit, you can. We want to provide that option. We want Routify to be as flexible as it can. I'd probably recommend not adding it to SvelteKit unless you need it. Because while like I think the DX of Routify is like really good, it adds extra JavaScript, which might end up hurting your application more than benefiting it. But like you can use Routify on its own, you can use it in SvelteKit, you can use it like I think wherever you want really.
So you would recommend running like the dget command to get like the original Svelte compiler and not running SvelteKit to use it?
I would recommend using our CLI to generate a template or using the Vite to generate a template.
Let's talk about the CLI. We didn't even talk about the CLI. I didn't even know there was a CLI. So
there's many. There's one built into Routify 2. There's one built into Routify 3. There's StackMix, and then there's npm Routify init. No, npm init Routify. That doesn't support Routify 2 yet, so that's why it's not announced. I haven't got around to finishing it yet, but that's like the new one.
Awesome. And that's kind of like the SvelteKit command. So it would just init a new Routify project.
I got heavily inspired by the SvelteKit. So there's like, you can select like a demo project or like a skeleton project. And then I'm trying to make it so you can like add TypeScript and add other things as well.
Awesome. That's pretty cool.
I'll second Willow there and say if you don't know if you need Routify, you probably don't. You get that feeling of hitting a wall at some point where like I can't work through this right now. What can I do? That's where Routify comes in. Like personally, I tend to start out with SvelteKit if I'm doing a quick project, and sometimes I know in advance if I'll know Routify or not, if I need Routify or not. Other times I find out a week into the project I need to have Routify here, and it's a very painless experience because you pretty much just install Routify and then move your routes into a different folder, and that's it almost.
Great. Yeah, it seems super easy to get started with. I think we've kind of covered a lot of it. I think what we're going to do now is jump over to our Purrfect Picks. Brittany's going to go first, and if you guys have like any additionals, just throw them in our private chat, and I'll throw them on screen. So here is Brittany's first pick.
Awesome. I think this is Severance. It doesn't even say the name of it there.
It is.
Yeah. So this show like confused my husband, and he was not into it for the first few episodes. And I will admit that it is slow going. Like for 1 or 2 episodes, there's a lot of like build up, but I am completely hooked now and need more than 1 episode a week. We caught up to it with like the first, like, I think we had 3 or 5 episodes and we watched through those. And then now it's once a week. And we were like, I need to know what happens. Like they leave cliffhangers. Like,
is it like too crazy? Like, is it out there?
It's kind of out there, but we don't really know what's happening yet. So we don't know how out there it really is.
Genre-wise, what does it compare to?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean,
The Office in a trippy way.
yeah, they work in an office. And so the idea behind the show, without ruining anything for anyone, is that they have severed their brains between like their home life and their work life. So when you go into work, you have no knowledge of your outside self at all.
Which is just, that's how we work now. So it's the same thing.
It's so crazy. It's just like, and it's like they're trying to figure out pieces of like what their outside self is like and why they're making these decisions. And it's really interesting.
I think Ben Affleck did a similar movie called Paycheck.
Paycheck?
Oh, Paycheck was like his mind got erased though at one point.
Yeah.
He was always trying to like backward and like engineer stuff, and then they would erase his mind so he'd like not know it, and it became a mess. But more of an action movie for sure. I'm gonna jump to your next one, Brett. It's Netlify's blog.
Yeah. Maybe I should have actually plugged my GitPod podcast that I did with them on developer experience. But this is a post by Sarah Drasner. She wrote back in January when she was I think she might have been still at Netlify at that point. She's moved on to Google now, but she wrote this post, and they have this great idea of developer experience at Netlify where their engineers actually go onto different teams for a little while so that they're able to get empathy for the teams and how they use like the API and how they create the product. And then you get empathy for the end user, and it just allows this better creation of the tool, which I mean, I really enjoy using Netlify. So I think they do a great job of building it, and I love that empathy aspect.
Yeah, that's cool. I need this article. The whole dev advocacy thing is interesting.
Yes, this will help.
Cool. My first and only pick today, because I didn't get a fun one, is this open source alternative 2. And I'm always looking like, obviously, for open source projects and things that kind of compare. A lot of times you'll find things like this and they're like, oh, it's one-to-one the same. Like, I don't know, terrible example, but like GIMP and Photoshop or something like that. It's not comparable, but a lot of these
they
that
tried
show
to
up
compare it.
are good. Like, there's a lot of good things in here. So you can break them down by category and jump into it. So there's items in here for like analytics to separate you from Google Analytics and all kinds of stuff in here. So check out open source alternative.2. I thought it was pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome. I love free
Willow
stuff.
added one, so let me pop that in. Willow, do you want to talk about Tauri?
Yeah, so Tauri is the Rust-based way of turning your web application into a desktop application, and I love it. I've just been playing around with it. I'm working on a blog post at the moment of how to use it with SvelteKit, and that should be out sometime next week. It's great because you can get up and running like 5 minutes. I don't know who's seen Mac OS Web by Peru.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Pop it in the chat if you want to put it up on screen.
Yeah, sure.
But
It's really cool.
yeah, just out of curiosity, I wanted to see how long it would take me to turn it into a desktop app. I think about 3 minutes. I installed the Tauri CLI, I ran Tauri in it, and then I ran the dev command, and I was done.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's
It's
crazy.
great. Yeah.
It looks like they have a lot of plans coming up as well.
Yeah, they're on their release candidates now, so hopefully we'll have like a 1.0 soon.
That's
So
really
you
cool.
can turn any like web application into a desktop application?
Yes. And they also have like you can do stuff you can code in Rust as well. But there's also got like built-in things, like if you want to do file system operations and stuff, they've got that built in. Or they got a bunch of tools for like generating icons for your app and stuff, and it's just great.
So the kind of comparison would be like Electron, maybe?
Yes. Electron's node-based, and it's great. It's like it powers so many things like Discord, right?
Yeah. Slack,
and VS Code.
Discord.
VS Code,
VS
yeah.
Code.
But it's slow. It's big.
Yeah.
It doesn't support ESM properly. All these things. And also it's not Rust-based. And Rust is cool.
I like that. Cool.
It's definitely hot right now. It's like one of those topics that just keeps going like crazy.
Yeah.
Jake, I forgot yours. Do you have one that I should show on screen?
I can't really think of anything now.
Okay, no
We're going to
worries.
think of something after the show because that's on my brain, unfortunately.
It's all
Maybe
good.
Disney.
I think we're cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for coming on and talking all about Routify. And I hope to see version 3 soon. You might have to come back on and show us how it works.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love to.
Awesome.
great.
It's great to have you.
Thanks.
Later.
Thanks for having us.
Alex, are you okay?